and we are talking about geography today. Now, anytime that I show you guys a new video or things like that, and there are vocab words, I'll always underline the vocab words and then have the definition in a secondary color so you can kind of see that. Okay, so for the beginning of geography, Japan itself is a mountainous archipelago. And so what an archipelago is, it is a chain or group of islands kind of all together. Florida, down there at the Keys, Key West, things like that. That is an archipelago because it's a group of islands all below Florida. Hawaii is an archipelago, so it's a group of islands all together. They either form a chain or there's a group right there, and they're all known as one thing. So the islands for Hawaii, they're all different names, but it's all together. Collectively, the group is called Hawaii. Down below Florida, where you've got the Keys, there's numerous little islands down there below Florida, but collectively, it's all called the Keys of, like Florida Keys. A lot of your island chains and things like that are all the same. Same way with Japan. There are numerous islands in Japan that are smaller, but together they're all collectively called Japan. So anytime you have a bunch of different islands together, it's always called an archipelago. Now, Japan itself is off the eastern coast of China and the Korean Peninsula. Now, based off of our discussions in class, what a peninsula is, but just in case you forgot, it is a land mass that is surrounded on three sides by water. So you can see here in the green, there's my land mass, three sides of water, okay? Korea is a peninsula. Florida is a peninsula. India is a peninsula, okay? Now, for Japan itself, so I've drew you kind of a very basic sort of map up here to kind of reference. There will be a picture of like a close-up picture of Japan, of a map of Japan, so you can kind of see it a little bit better, and the PowerPoint that I post on Google Classroom, so make sure you check that out. But you can see here, here's China, so all of this over here would be Asia. Here's China itself. At the northernmost point of China is where we get the Korean Peninsula that kind of sticks down. And you can see that there's water on three sides. And then off the coast of both of these, off the eastern coast, is a chain of islands here off the side. Now, some of the ones at the top and the bottom are smaller. The one in the middle is the biggest, but all of these islands together are what make up Japan itself. Okay? Now, Japan is surrounded by water. It is a group of islands, so it's surrounded by water. It's surrounded by water on all sides. Because of this water and being surrounded by it, even though China and Korea are very close, Japan was very much isolated from the rest of the known world at the time. Japan had kind of kept to themselves, didn't really interact with anybody. Once China makes their way over to Japan, that's when they start sharing a lot, and that's where a lot of those strong Chinese influences come into play that we talked about in the last video. Now, Japan is going to be isolated, but the water that surrounds them not only isolates them, it provides them with a lot of good things as well. So you can see down here, it's going to provide them with their food source. Because Japan is so mountainous, because it is covered in mountains and it's very, very small, there's not a whole lot of area for them to farm and have strong amounts of crops. So because they can't rely on this farming, because they can't rely on the crops, they don't have major rivers throughout Japan to where it's a bunch of fertile soil like in the other civilizations we've talked about. For that reason, they have to rely elsewhere for their food source. And their food source is going to be the water. This is where they're going to get their primary fish. Primarily, what your Japanese are eating at this time is different types of seafood. That's going to be where they pull most of their nutrition from. Now, the second piece that this water allows them to have is it allows them to transport. We've talked about how transportation is a big deal. It allows you to travel. It allows you to do so militarily. It also allows you to kind of make those trade connections once you start going further out. That's going to be a strong influence between these Asian countries. Is once they kind of figure out that they're there, once China and Japan know that the other is there, they're going to start trading with each other. That's where those influences come from. But it also allows them to transport. This is going to be a super, super big deal, them being surrounded by water and this reliance on their transportation for the water. This is going to be one of the reasons why Japan is going to have such a strong naval force, especially once you get into like the World War II era of Japan itself. Now, the last piece is protection. Japan is completely isolated, and because they are surrounded by water, it's not as easy to go in and attack Japan as it would be to attack a much larger area of land or things like that. So, it is surrounded by water. Yes, we've got good things and bad things. It is isolated, but it does allow them to have the food, the transportation, and the protection to kind of stay in their own little space and to thrive. And we'll talk about more of that and kind of what Japan looks like itself next week.